Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the latest episode of Gold and Guest Talk Tottenham with me, Lee Wilmot, not Rob Guest, because he is not with us currently. I will explain more very shortly, but I'm joined by Alistair Gold. How are you, Ali?
I'm all right. You worried me there. I thought you were going to say he's no longer with us.
No,
I sounded very serious.
When I was saying it, I thought I need to make sure I don't come across like that, because Guesty is still with us in the mortal realm, but he is not in the country. Some of you listening and watching may have seen him on Twitter. He's gone over. He hasn't gone over to the dark side at all. Due to the red side, yes. Due to our Arsenal reporter not being available to go on Arsenal's pre-season tour, Guesty, the lover of travelling that he is, willingly accepted the opportunity to go out to Singapore and Hong Kong to cover Arsenal for us, and it'll actually help. Yeah, it'll actually help, won't it? Because we've obviously got the first North London derby not taking place in London, in Hong Kong later this month. It's right at the end of this month, isn't it?
Yes, that one. Yes, it is right at the end of the month. Yes, so it works out quite well, doesn't it?
So you'll both be out there.
We will. We'll both be on the ground, able to do a pod out there as well, which would be great. And yeah, very strange. Bearing in mind, media spaces are normally so tight at places like the Emirates. Like, he doesn't normally get to go and see on the derby. He had to go to Hong Kong to go and watch.
Yeah.
So that'll be very entertaining, and we'll be able to get loads out of that from both being there.
Yes, so don't give him too much stick on social media. He's doing his job in a random restructure of the company. I can't even remember when it was. He went from being a Tottenham reporter to a kind of all-round football reporter. So he does have to cover Arsenal every now and then. And took one for the team going on tour to Singapore and Hong Kong because he put his hand up for that and didn't mind doing that, did he really?
What a trooper. What a trooper on that journey across the world.
Yes. Anyway, enough of Guesty. We're here to talk about Tottenham rather than Guesty. And football's back. Thomas Frank era has begun. A 2-0 win over Reading at the weekend at the Select Car Leasing Stadium. Try saying that when you've had a few. And yeah, a good second half performance by the looks of things. First half, perhaps a little bit rusty, but second half, a few players really stood out, didn't they?
Yeah. I said this to a couple of people in the press box before kickoff. I was like, this first half team looks kind of functional. The second half team looks like it's got the more exciting players. So I think we'll probably see a little bit more in the second half. And actually, I forgot to say, even before that, we had Thomas Frank's first press conference as well ahead of the game. So it was quite a 1-2 on the Friday and Saturday. We got to experience the Dane in his press conferences and what they were like. And then we had one of his games as well. So where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with the press conference or the match?
Yeah, driving this. Yeah. He's since the press conference came first, and we're all waiting to. How long were we left waiting to hear from him after he joined the club? It was at least 3 weeks, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it was almost a month, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. Press conference. What was he like? What was it like being in there? Was it everything you expected and more? Because he does come across as a very nice man, doesn't he? And a kind of affable person that I think the press are going to enjoy speaking to.
Yeah, pretty much all of that. There you go, we're done. No, it's yeah, he was in good spirits. I think we have to allow for the fact that, with no disrespect to Brentford, his press conference there, from what I'm told, would have a regulars of about 6 people, and another 2 student journalists would often be there, and that was kind of it. Whereas obviously for his first one, he's in a packed press conference room at Hotspur Way. I think there were about 30 different media organisations there. And let's be honest, if you talk at Tottenham Hotspur, if you're the manager of Tottenham Hotspur, every word you say is scrutinised in every possible way. And yeah, about 44 minutes, somewhere around that mark, he was talking for, which, it's about 5 times as long as Nuno press conferences were back in the day. And you've got to immediately go in with the understanding that it's going to be different to what came before in terms of, a certain Ange Postecoglou. We know that one of his skills was his communication, his ability to come in with a message, and he would come out of it and he'd give you all these zinger one-liners that would all kind of fill our copy very nicely. Thomas Frank isn't that kind of orator. He is someone that will come in. He likes a bit of a joke, some little moments where he was trying to kind of keep it all nice and light. But ultimately, with him, it will be more about. I get the impression that normally he's quite honest, open, and forthright about stuff. That kind of, I think, the Danish way, often the Scandinavian way as well, that they'll kind of say what's exactly on their mind. So I think we're going to get a lot of this. But from what I understood from people that have kind of covered Brentford before, he was probably a bit more guarded in this press conference than he was there. And that's fair enough, because don't forget, he's coming in with Son, Romero, futures being unclear at the moment, transfers, the Morgan Gibbs-White stuff that we're going to talk about as well. There's loads of little scenarios going on right now. And also, he had to speak about the fact that, yes, he was taken over from someone that had won Spurs' first trophy in 17 years. So it was this kind of awkward situation, I suppose, he was coming into.
And no disrespect to Brentford either, but there's going to be occasions where he can probably say something in a Brentford press conference and it won't go viral, for want of a better word. It won't go everywhere. So you can kind of understand him perhaps being a bit more guarded coming to a club like Tottenham.
Yeah, I think, and also it's going to have to build a trust with us, that we're not trying to stitch him up, that we're not trying to lead him down a pathway towards saying stuff that we want him to say. I mean, we technically always are, but we're not trying to do it in a vicious way to get them to go anywhere in particular. But yeah, he was good. I felt there were probably a couple of times you could tell a little bit of nerves, just some stumbling over words, things like that. But on the whole, I felt he kind of attacked it pretty well, really, in the main, in how he needed to. I think, again, the honesty thing, there was one moment where he spoke about the fact that, we are going to lose. We're going to lose games. And it was like a really interesting, different way of going about, because obviously we're going from someone that said, I always win in my second year, and then he won and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, we know there wasn't a lot of winning in the Premier League, of course. But the statement was always there: we're winners, we want to be winners, all of this. And so to have someone come in and say, look, we're going to lose games, and then obviously bring up the example of Arsenal being one that didn't. And he was like, oh, but they did lose in the cups and stuff. Yes, they did. So yeah, he was very honest in that respect. What else? I think probably upset the Korean audience in terms of declare, and again, just being honest and saying he hadn't decided on his captain for next season. So that is something that certainly, I think, a fair few people will be like, oh, well, if he's staying, you're not going to strip the captaincy of someone that's been there for 10 years and just won the first trophy, like major trophy Spurs have had in almost 2 decades. So that was a bit like, oh, okay. But yeah, on the whole, I thought it was a positive press conference. I thought he said a lot of the right things. Like I said, it's not got a kind of a flourish with it, and the kind of, like I say, the one-liner, the zingers that Postecoglou would come with. But then, football's kind of not won in a press conference room. You can help yourself in a press conference room, but ultimately, trying it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I feel like that Son situation it's a difficult position for him to be in anyway. Like I think back to when Ange came in and there was the furore around Harry Kane and his future, and now Thomas Frank is coming into a club where he's trying to be a bit guarded, and he's coming after, as you say, a coach that's finally won a trophy, and he's having to replace that man and try and build on that. How can you build on that? By winning another trophy, isn't it? But he's now got this situation of, we know that Son, as you've reported on football.london, is closer or more inclined than ever to leave the club because he's won a trophy, he's been there 10 years, and he feels like he's done what he set out to do now. So when you're going to be asked about the captaincy, and he doesn't have an answer yet, because he probably doesn't know if Son's going to be there, as Ange didn't know if Harry Kane was going to be. Well, he may well know. I think Ange probably did know that Harry Kane wasn't going to be there, but didn't want to talk about it because he couldn't talk about it. And we might have that similar situation with Thomas Frank right now with Son Heung-min. And he has to be careful what he says in that regard. And it's going to be difficult for a new manager having to deal with that.
Yeah, well, it's funny, as you were saying, that's exactly that. Postecoglou claimed afterwards that he did know exactly what was happening with Kane. And I wonder whether maybe that's exactly the same in this scenario. Maybe he knows what's happening with Son. There's a few different kind of ways the whole Son situation could play out. He could go to MLS, which seems to be kind of one of the interests for him. We know Saudi Pro League's interested in him, but also there could be the option that he just sees out his contract, plays some Champions League football this season, which wouldn't be too shabby a way to kind of see out your season. and then heads off as a club legend next year. Oh, I've said it a million times, and I'll always stick with it. It should be down to Sonny at this stage with everything he's done. His decision should be the one that guides what comes next. And yeah, I tried to get out of him. I was like, "Have you actually had the conversations with Son and Romero yet about their future?" And his answer didn't even touch whether he'd had this conversation. He just spoke about them being really good in training, driving the standards that other players kind of need to follow. The only thing I would say, and again, it might be me overreading into these things, I kind of look back and all the things that he said about Romero, I just felt like with Romero, he was saying he's very, very important to this team. And I know he's looking forward to this season. And there was a lot of stuff for me that almost pushed more towards Romero staying. Whereas with the Sonny stuff, it felt more like unknown. We don't really know what's happening with him. And that may just be as a consequence of what he is behind the scenes and what he's been told by the club. But certainly, yeah, I would have felt out of those two, if you're asking me to judge a press conference on what their futures are, it kind of felt like Romero was more sticking around this season.
Here's one for you then.
Yep.
Sonny is clearly coming towards the end of his Tottenham career, whether that be this summer or next summer. Do you think that by giving Romero the captaincy, it sends a message out to Romero for him to stay for the longer term at Tottenham because he's given that honour, knowing that if you give Son the captaincy, it's only going to be for one season maximum. Do you think that could play a part in Thomas Frank's thinking?
Oh, good question. Do I think being given a captaincy keeps a player at a football club? Probably not. I think you're right in saying it kind of shows that he is important to everything, but I think he knows that. I'm sure Christian Romero knows how important he is. I would imagine he would be the captain, bearing in mind, obviously, we saw he picked a captain for each half against Reading. One was Romero, one was Son. I don't think Maddison would be a captain ahead of Romero in my opinion. I don't think so. And I'm not saying Romero is the most talkative leader type, but I think he is definitely as Postecoglou once said of him, he makes the others walk taller around him. And I think he would make sense as a captain. I don't think it would be something that would make him definitely stay at the club, but I do think he does have this affection for Spurs. I think people try and make out that he only cares about Argentina, doesn't want to play for Spurs, stuff like that. I think you can sense in the way he talks about the club that he does actually love being at Spurs and kind of what they've done for his career as well. And now, obviously, he's a winner through them as well as his international wins. I think it would be something that would kind of make him proud. I don't know whether it would be enough to prevent him if, let's say, Atletico Madrid did make a decent money bid.
Yep, fair enough. We were going to kind of start off with the positives, but since we're already talking about Son, and it's not to say he's a massive negative, but you have got a story going on football.london at some point today. Well, it will be there already by the time people listen to and see this, of the winners and losers from the Reading game. And Sonny was rusty. A few moments that have been seen on social media of how he kind of looked at his kind of facial expressions, his body language. Let's talk us through what you saw of Son on Saturday.
Yeah, right. First off, losers is so hard. It is my biggest bugbear when we have to do winners and losers. It's such an obvious format and everyone does it, and I get it, but it kind of does feel like it should be impressors and disappointers. It's like, I know that's not as punchy, but obviously
doesn't quite make a good headline.
It doesn't. But also, calling someone a loser that's just like won your first trophy like 2 months ago, and also he did actually contribute to both goals on Saturday. He earned both of the corners that led to the goal, so it's not like he didn't have a contribution on the day. But there is absolutely fair to say he was incredibly rusty. It was nowhere near where Son can be. He was losing the ball. There was one kind of moment he went to the touchline and cut inside, forgot to bring the ball with him. It was like it just stayed there and the defender took it away. And there was a sliced effort, which was a difficult effort, but he sliced it very high and wide. And he just kind of cut quite a frustrated, forlorn figure. There was a lovely run by Kudus down the right. He pulled it back for Donnelly, and you could see that Sonny was annoyed in a way that hadn't come across to him, and then that Donnelly should have passed to him as well rather than shooting. And then after the game, it looked like he kept feeling his back as if he was getting some pain there. It just was one of those days where it didn't work for him. It didn't look great. And yeah, there's various clips of him out there and on social media. I always find those a little bit difficult to analyze because they're snapshots of a moment. It's like when you catch someone with their eyes half closed in a photo, and you think, oh, they're asleep. They're asleep in the dugout. It's like, well, no, they're not. They've just literally blinked or something. And I kind of feel like some of these videos are a little bit like that. Because like there's one where it looks like Thomas Frank is coming over to say something and Sonny turns away and Thomas Frank kind of awkwardly does the old, oh, yeah, I'm going to pretend I'm waving to someone else. But it might not have been that. It's like a 2-second clip that maybe the angle made it look like that. But yeah, it wasn't a good day for Sonny. He looked like he's trying to get a lot of cobwebs off of his game and everything and the way he's playing. He'll get sharper, he'll get better. But obviously there's more to come about kind of what his future holds and whether there is anything underlying to all of this. Obviously he's got the tour coming up, which is kind of big for him going back to his homeland. It's big for Spurs, obviously, for different reasons. But yeah, he wasn't alone. There were a few players that looked quite rusty. Lucas Berval, especially one of them. But yeah, on a day kind of when his quality coming into that side against a League One team, you would think he would blow them away. It was other players that kind of made the difference. But again, it is just a friendly. I don't want to kind of go overboard on hammering Son's horror show when essentially, yeah, it was just the first friendly of a long-ish pre-season.
I can't believe you just called a club legend and the new wonder kid on the block, Lucas Bergvall, losers. Unbelievable. But I do agree with you. And we'll probably get criticised in the comments on this now because I've agreed with you on something that those kind of everyone will say, oh no, but it looks like this and it looks like this. Those 2-second clips are just you can never tell what's going on. I always hate it when people bring up pictures of like, oh, someone's smiling just after something bad has happened. It's like, how dare they smile in one brief moment after a bad thing has happened in the lives of someone else. But yes, we'll get away from the kind of the negatives because there were some positives from 2 new players as well. I've called Lucas Bergvall the new kid on the block, but he's been outdone by a newer kid on the block now. Luka Vuskovic, the key thing for me to ask, I suppose, is can he defend? Because we know he's good in opposition boxes because he scored plenty of goals and created plenty of assists for Westerlo. And he's done it again already for Spurs, but can he defend?
We don't know yet is the answer to that. He had some shaky early moments. He had some mistimed touches, a mistimed tackle as well. But then later in the game made a decent clearance from a header that was going towards the goal, I think it was. So we don't really know. And again, a League One side, with no disrespect to Reading, it's not the kind of opposition he would be facing week in, week out at Spurs. But there is obviously something about him. There clearly is. Spurs wouldn't have shelled out that money 2 years ago for him, knowing that he was going to kind of come along all these months and months later. He is a presence. He is a big lad for an 18-year-old. He is huge. And he definitely has the physicality to play in the Premier League. Obviously, he's going to have to get used to... He will have not experienced anything like the pace of the Premier League when it eventually gets his shot in it. So that's all still to come. Yeah, we didn't see enough defensively. I mean, look, he kept a clean sheet. It was interesting to see him against Van der Ven. Got alongside Van der Ven. Potentially, is that a future partnership we see for the long term at some point? Maybe. But yeah, there's no doubting that at the other end of the pitch, he is ridiculous. He's like so calm and collected and assured in what he does, and his technique's beautiful.
I mean, finish.
Oh, it's a lovely. That's the finish that a striker, Solanke, would have been very proud of that finish. It was beautiful, and the header on as well. If you watch it kind of closer, he's being pulled all over the shot by his shirt, but he's absolutely it's like the marker is like a fly. He's not bothered in any way at all by it, and he gets the header across to Will Lancashire to score. No, it was a really showy, exciting 45 minutes, I think is the best way to put it, without probably learning too much about him as a defender. But certainly, I think for the highlight reels and the compilations, it's going to look great. But obviously now we need to see this on a consistent basis. I mean, Luton's going to be a little bit more of the same. But obviously, Arsenal, Newcastle straight after that, and Bayern Munich are going to be 3 rather sterner tests of his defensive abilities. I just kind of feel slightly for Kota Takai, because Kota Takai's come in right in the middle of a J-League season, really sharp, ready to go. 20-year-old, bit older, bit more experienced than Vuskovic. Probably would have played, you would think, on Saturday. And of course, in the Tottenham way, he picks up a knock in training and misses the first friendly. So I do wonder whether he's sitting there thinking, oh, Vuskovic has got his shot and he's been brilliant, kind of thing. Because I do think it's probably going to come down to those two. At the moment, the indications are that Takai will be the one sticking around, and Vuskovic maybe will head out on loan, unless they decide to keep them both till January and see how things are going. But that was definitely a kind of a very showy, like I say, kind of leap forward for Vuskovic in terms of getting the fans behind him sticking around at Spurs. But yeah, that was cool. It's cool to watch. It's one of those things you can look back, hopefully, in years to come and say, I watched his first game in a Spurs shirt.
Yep. And the other person making a real impact was the other new signing. What at the moment is the big money signing of the summer. We're going to talk about a certain other someone that might usurp that soon. But £55 million on Mohamed Kudus, and he took the second half by the scruff of the neck, didn't he?
Yeah, he changed the game. Absolutely changed it. Again, it's a friendly, it's a League One side. We know all of that. And we're not going to go overboard about that, but he's fun to watch. He's going to be very entertaining. Again, we don't know defensively what he's going to be like yet, and whether he's going to work back, track back, do all the things that Thomas Frank's going to need him to do. I don't think he would have pushed for him to be signed if he didn't believe he's going to do that. But certainly with the ball at his feet, he's got some strength. I tell you, lower kind of body strength. He's very difficult to get off the ball. There's shades of the Dembele about the way he carries the ball and turns and twists and gets away from people. And I know I used to say that about Tanguy Dembele. It's true. It just didn't work for him with the rest of his, time at Tottenham. But certainly, Kudus looks like he's good fun to watch and instant impact. Really, it was his corner, outswinging corner that Vuskovic headed onto Will Lancashire. His pass into Vuskovic to score for a direct assist. This lovely run up the touchline with a little bit of link up with Jed Spence, although I think the ball went out if you look from a certain replay. Doesn't matter. But he kept going, picked out Donnelly with a nice pass as well, rather than just kind of pummeling it straight into the 6-yard box. It was probably an earlier ball onto Son, but I think you had to hit it innocently, and after that moment, it was kind of covered. But yeah, he picked out Donnelly well, and I think he's going to be someone that we've watched Tottenham struggle so many times to break down teams. And I think if you've got someone with that kind of magic ability with his feet where he can instantly take 2 players out of a game, suddenly there's space for everyone else as well. So yeah, really excited to see kind of what he does. Faster than I thought. I didn't expect him to have that pace. I don't know why. I knew he was a good dribbler and I thought he was kind of average pace, but he was getting away from people very easily in terms of...
Yeah, he's quick.
Yeah, he's good. He's very good. So yeah, we'll see how he settles in, but certainly looks like he's kind of already forming those little relationships with players on the pitch, like Spence as well, especially. And obviously all the first half team haven't even had a game with him yet. So get to see how he can link up with Solanke in the future will be great as well. But yeah, very exciting debut. He's the kind of big name experience kind of player, Champions League experience, Premier League experience. That's the kind of signings we want Spurs to make. And should hopefully be a really good addition.
Yeah, really exciting. As you say, it is only 45 minutes of football, but I think if anyone wasn't excited about him, having seen what he's done at West Ham in the last couple, obviously he didn't have a great season last season, but I think his talent was there. If anyone wasn't excited, then I think they will be getting excited after that first 45 minutes in a Spurs shirt anyway, and a beautiful black Spurs shirt. I haven't been on a podcast since the away kit's been out, and I will be purchasing that because it is there's something about a black football kit that just does something for me. So yes, do like that.
It feels wrong, doesn't it? Because we always kind of assume that was the referee, like you weren't allowed to have the black. And I think ever since it's kind of been this like forbidden fruit. Yeah, and it does. It's very cool, that one. It is my favourite for a little while since probably the light blue retro one of about 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Before we move on from Saturday, there was a few bad incidents in the crowd, weren't there? The police are investigating. Was it things thrown onto the pitch from the stands?
Towards each other.
Oh, towards each other.
It's just mind-boggling. It's a friendly on a nice sunny-ish day. Everyone's there to watch their first game of football, or Spurs fans are, and it's just like, what are you doing? We could see it kind of unfolding up the top, in the corner of the, I think it was the southeast corner, and we could, what are they doing up there? We could see the stewards were having to form this line, and what it was, they were just things were being lobbed across, like across fans and stuff. Some of it were hitting the stewards and everything. I've had various people who were kind of up there were telling me little bits and pieces. It's difficult. I can't really report what they were saying was happening, especially if there's kind of police stuff potentially investigating into it. But it just sounded so needless and daft, and just people looking for something other than watching a game of football. Those years really need to be gone. They really do. But yeah, so police investigating into that. Thames Valley Police got a little statement from them. We're aware of a public order incident at yesterday's match between Reading and Tottenham at the Select Car Leasing Stadium. Officers are investigating, and we're working with the club to identify the individuals involved. Anyone with information is asked to contact the force on 101 or making a report online, quoting investigation reference number 43250365-707. So yeah, it's just so pointless. I never understood it. Kind of fights and violence of football. It kind of just feels like the old dark days of football. Friendly. Not that there's any good time to do it. My goodness, when you should really be excited about football returning and a new manager in the dugout and everything. Crazy.
It was quite prevalent in, was it the Euros? Lots of people throwing stuff down when people were taking corners. I can't remember if it was the Euros or another tournament quite recently, but I've never understood that kind of the desire to do things like that. And if you're throwing stuff at each other as well, yeah,
it wasn't thrown at the pitch.
No, it was thrown at people.
Down. They were just lobbing stuff across the divide, as it were.
Very strange. And unnecessary. That probably about halfway through the pod. In all the excitement of talking about Guesty at the beginning, I'm not even sure I said at the beginning that the Golden Guest Talk Tottenham podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. And Ali's now going to talk to us about their eSIM Saily, aren't you?
I can't believe you blamed Guesty for that at the start of the podcast. Yes, I'm pretty sure Guesty is using NordVPN's Saily abroad as well right now. I will certainly be using it. I head out in a few days' time, head off to Hong Kong to cover the game out there, and I will definitely be using Saily. If you haven't heard me extol the virtues of it thus far, it is an eSIM from NordVPN, and it's just really good service. It's cheaper probably than most people's mobile network roaming costs. It allows you to connect up to your data and everything while you're anywhere in the world. It's just a really good service that I've used both across other sides of the world, but also in Europe as well. It's a really, really good product. And as I always say, I wouldn't be kind of promoting it if I didn't believe in it myself, and have used it plenty of times, and I have. Another good thing out of the Nord stable. So yeah, I do recommend it if you've still got your holidays to come before this summer closes. Do think about Saily, which is spelled Saily. And not only all of that, but we can get you an exclusive discount on it. So if you download Saily in the App Store, you can use our code GOLDGUEST at the checkout to get you 15% off your first purchase, or you can just go straight online to saily.com/goldguest, and that will do a similar thing for you. And in case you missed any of that, you can get more information by going to our episode description box.
Lovely stuff. I do hope he is using it, because he did have a few hotel issues when he first arrived in Singapore. So it would have saved him some money, I'm sure, if he was using a Saily SIM while he was out there.
I'm pretty sure I'll grill him when I'm in Hong Kong.
Moving on. I mentioned Kudus is obviously the big signing currently. There are big hopes that he will be usurped by another signing in the coming days and weeks. We have a morning conference on football.london every single day, just to find out what everyone on the team is working on and how we're going to kind of cover the biggest news of the day and the week and what's going on. Obviously, during transfer season, it's very hectic and things change all the time. But I think for the past week and a half, I think I've started most of those conferences by asking you, what are you going to write about Morgan Gibbs-White today? And quite often you say, there's no update. Which is fair enough, because we don't really know what's going on. Forest are keeping things very close to their chest. Tottenham are keeping things very close to their chest. But there was news yesterday. Forest obviously had a couple of pre-season friendlies in this country. Now they've travelled out to Portugal to take on Fulham and Estoril, I think it is, this weekend and into the middle of next week. And Morgan Gibbs-White was not on the plane, which got everyone's tongues wagging. Wondering what was happening, what was going on, if there was a transfer close. There is no transfer close. They're still at an impasse with the legal complications of the deal. It is a private matter for Morgan Gibbs-White why he's been left at home. His wife is obviously very prevalent on social media. She is pregnant at the moment, and Morgan Gibbs-White has decided to stay at home with her for the time being. So yeah, we don't want to go into any kind of details of that. It would be wrong of us to talk about any personal issues for him. But the fact remains with the transfer, it's still there, isn't it? We're still waiting effectively to find out what's going to happen, aren't we?
Yeah. And the reason we mentioned about his fiance as well, it's not to go like, oh, here's some information. It's more so just because we know how people are. We're like it ourselves. And exactly like you said there, sometimes when you hear that someone isn't doing something or they're not gone off with a squad, you're instantly like very cynical and you're like, oh, it's this. Oh, there you go. So it's just to let you know. And look, the information's out there if you want to see it as well. It's not that, we have to give it to you, but this is a kind of a personal matter going on there that sometimes things are a little bit more important in life than football. And this is exactly one of these scenarios. And nothing transfer related or football related whatsoever. But back to the transfer stuff. It's just it's probably the strangest transfer situation I have ever had to report on, and that is saying something with the things Tottenham have got up to over the 9 years or so that I've covered them. But this one is so weird because it feels like, I'm sure there must be stuff happening, but it feels like nothing's happening. There's like this legal kind of letter that was sent to Spurs and Morgan Gibbs-White's representatives. Essentially, kind of, I can't remember the exact expression now. What was it? Was it a letter of intent?
Letter threatening legal action.
Yeah, putting both parties on legal notice. That was the one I was looking for. Yeah. So that kind of almost acts like a bit of a blocker, I think, as like something to fear, if you take this any further. But we're in this really weird situation now where there's talk about, someone coming or Spurs making a bigger bid or another club coming in with a bigger bid. And you're kind of thinking like, hello, what about a release clause? The release clause is the center of all of this. It's like, why is something stopping Tottenham from triggering that release clause and then fighting out in the courts? What is stopping another club from coming in and paying that release clause? Is there a time-sensitive nature to it? Is there a certain makeup of how the money has to be paid that is stopping people? Is there something else to it? Because it feels really odd that there was this very clear way for this transfer to happen. And right now, it's almost like Forest have just gone, no, you can't do that. And everyone's a bit like, oh, okay. It's really strange. It's like, no. And I just wonder that like, Tottenham, from what we understand, don't believe they've done anything wrong. So, okay, so why not pushing forward with it kind of thing? And it's very, very odd. And the player on his side certainly has been doing everything asked of him by Forest. He's been training well, apparently. He played in their game against Monaco on Saturday as well, played 45 minutes, came off, had the fans chanting his name, clapped back at them, did a heart shape with his hands as well. So he's doing everything that's asked of him. But it feels like one of these scenarios where I don't know whether he's going to have to kind of create his own exit, as it were, and put his foot down, put a transfer request in, legally counter it, maybe because they'd agreed a release clause, which they're now not honouring. I don't really know whether he has to do that, but it certainly doesn't appear like he's going to do that by his current actions. And yeah, look, there's the potential, the longer it drags on, of course, of another club coming in. And there's always been rumblings that of a potential like a PSR deal of sorts, with City coming in for Morgan Gibbs-White and McAtee going in the other direction as well to Forest. Obviously with a bit of money involved too. So is that something that still kind of rears its head, even though City have bought, a fair few players around those positions? It's so odd. We kind of get bits and pieces of information, but nothing that kind of massively pushes it on. I feel like it's going to be one of these where suddenly there's going to be a huge development. Whether it's either going to be there's been a breakthrough, and because Spurs and Forest aren't even talking. How in the world are they going to get to the next step? So I think we're either going to find out that suddenly something happened and there was a sweetener or a legal side of things that changed things, or Gibbs-White did say, look, I'm going to kind of take my own action on it, or it'll be the other way. It'll completely fall apart because another club will come in who Forest will want to deal with. It's very strange. The trouble is, as a question for you, really, can you let this drag on? Or do you have to eventually at some point move on to other ideas and targets?
I think you, again, it's in a piece you've written, I think, today being Tuesday, already, the kind of, if Reading showed us one of a number of things, was that because Maddison and Kulusevski aren't around, we are lacking in the number 10 department at the moment. Yes, the youngsters kind of got their chance to shine on Saturday, but you need someone of Morgan Gibbs-White's ability to come in, and I think he'll be a great signing. I think he's a really, really good footballer, and would love to see him at Spurs. And you just no one knows where it's going to end. Someone somewhere has leaked the release clause that should or shouldn't have been out in the public domain. Tottenham have
allegedly,
Tottenham have triggered it again. We understand, and I think I said to you probably early last week: is there a situation where the deal could get done, and then the legal ramifications would go on after that? Because if the release clause has been triggered, surely there's nothing stopping Spurs from opening conversation with Forest and we have to stress, and you said it there, that lines of communication have kind of stopped between the two clubs, and a lot of people are probably going, well, why do you need to communicate? It's already been agreed, the release clause has been triggered. They have to talk to each other because the breakdown of how that fee is going to be paid needs to be discussed between the two clubs. So it's not just a case of, oh, here's £60 million, we'll have your player, thank you very much. So that conversation needs to be had. And I think there might come a point where the Premier League or the FA might just say, well, there's nothing stopping you going ahead with this deal. If there's problems that have happened in the lead up to it in the background, we might deliberate on that, and we might give a verdict on that in 2, 3, 4 months' time. But the quality of player that he is, I would persist with it from my point of view as a Tottenham fan.
Yeah, I think you do have to have a cut-off date at some point. It can be towards the end of the window, but as long as you leave yourself enough time to bring someone else in, otherwise it has been kind of a wasted window. It's so odd. It's so odd. There's so many questions around that release clause that only the clubs can really answer. I've seen some reports saying it was triggered. I've seen some reports saying if Spurs trigger it. And it's like, well, he was set to come for his medical, so there must have been an indication that they triggered it. Obviously, he never ended up leaving Nottingham to come and do that, but that was the intention. So, yeah, it's strange. And I don't know. I'll always, as it's Tottenham, I'll always fear someone else coming in. That's the Tottenham way. But yeah, I think he's good enough, and Thomas Frank has wanted him for so long at Brentford. I think you hang around and do try and wait for it. I'm sure lawyers will be poring over everything possible, but it's just mad. It's going to be interesting to see whether anyone's tied themselves up in knots in the background, because there's definitely a lot of kind of silence around it from the Spurs end of things. Nobody officially is talking about it, but it feels like there's more information coming out from within Forest, official information about it all. And I just wonder whether that ends up being a bit of a tricky road as well. Yeah, but they also Forest will need to move on at some point.
Yeah.
Player wants to come to Tottenham. That's why it was all moving forward. He wasn't signing a new deal. He wasn't entertaining talks over a new deal, and he's got 2 years left. At some point, they have to kind of probably think, well, I've got 60 million, then we're going to have to take it. We might feel that's underneath his value, but can we really hold out, keep him this summer, and what we're going to get next season for him, kind of thing. And I know they've got a big season ahead. They've got European football themselves. Obviously, even that's a bit controversial, and what they're in now. They may find that there's potential other legal stuff going on from that whole avenue. I know Palace obviously are seeking all of their options, aren't they, as well? So, yeah, Forest seem to be slap bang in the middle of all the news. And I know they didn't want to really lose Elanga and Gibbs-White, but I think they got Hudson-Odoi as well, is another one who's towards the end of his contract as well. In the final, was it 12 months with him, maybe? So, yeah, they've got to start they've got to do something about these things. I don't think they can just sit there and just kind of put the fingers in their ears and hope nothing happens. I think they're going to at least have to communicate at the bare minimum, really.
Yeah, it's such a weird one. Without blowing smoke up Ali's backside, Ali is one of the best in the business when it comes to these things, and we've got sources in and around Nottingham. We've got Nottingham correspondent at Reach and close to people there in this, and we're trying so hard to find out what's going on, and we're not getting very far with it at the minute. But we will keep trying.
All of them, you can see across all the reporting. It's like these tiny little incremental updates once every so often, but mostly it's about what's happening at Forest and what little things Gibbs-White is meant to be doing, and that's kind of it. It's so strange.
Yeah. Staying with the transfers, one other player that's been linked with Spurs, probably has been in the past, but probably only recently again in the last couple of days. Joao Palhinha, the former Fulham midfielder. Obviously, Spurs crying out. We've got a couple, but we could do with another number 6 player, and kind of he fits that mold. Not had a great season with Bayern Munich. Was it single-digit games he played for them?
He started 6 Bundesliga games and 9 across all competitions. He has played in 25 last season, but it's handfuls of minutes here and there, really.
Yeah. So he's been linked again. He's in his 30s now, I think, isn't he? Is he 30, 31?
30.
Yeah. So what do you make of the links there? Is there anything kind of concrete there from Spurs' point of view? Is it just rumor at the minute? Is he someone that Thomas Frank? Lots of questions here. Is he someone that Thomas Frank? Do we think that is one that could get done, or is it going to be a case of perhaps someone having to go out the door first?
I think there's certainly interest there. He is a ball-winning midfielder who has Premier League experience. You can see a little bit of a theme maybe in the targets they've gone for in a fair bit of this window so far. You've had Kudus obviously played in Premier League. Matisse Tell's loan made permanent after half a season in the Premier League. Danso, I know that was already going to happen anyway, but he'd had a half season in the Premier League. Gibbs-White, obviously an established Premier League player too. And Palhinha, having played at Fulham for 2 seasons, wasn't it? And done very well there. And so, there's definitely interest there. There's just other aspects to it. And there is definitely the squad size is an issue right now. And, we put out the piece on it earlier. I think a lot of people were saying, it's classic Spurs, won't buy until they sell kind of thing. It's not so much a money thing. I think it's more a fact that they just have 78 players right now. So many players. I mean, you just look in midfield alone, and they've got, crikey, just going through some of the players. I'd written a list out here, so I didn't have to remember them. Basuma, Bentancur, Bergvall, Sarr, Gray, who can always all of those can play in that position. You've also got Madison and Kulusevski playing the deeper roles. We know they're trying to get Gibbs-White through the door, or certainly were. He plays in a deeper role as well if you want him to. So that is a heavily stacked midfield area. So I know there's this kind of belief from all of us on the outside, and myself included. It's just like, just buy them, and you can sell the players afterwards. And it's a bit like, have you noticed how bad Spurs are at selling players? That financially would be such a bad thing to do. And then the other line of thinking is, oh, well, tell them they're going to be in the reserves. Well, apart from the fact there aren't any reserves anymore in football, but tell them that they'll have to train with the under-21s. It's like, just not a thing. Just no football club is just going to say, oh, this player that's draining millions out of our club. Yeah. Let's tell him that he has to go and be in the under-21s. It's very rare that sort of stuff happens, especially at a club like Tottenham. And also, I'm going to mention it very quickly, but European numbers. 31 players have got to fit into 21 spots right now in the Champions League squad. You've got to get rid of some of those 10 excess players. And again, I know it's very easy from the outside to say, well, just tell that player he's not playing in the Champions League. Well, you go and do that. That's not as easy as it sounds. Crush some person's kind of belief that they're going to be able to play Champions League football this season. It doesn't. You can't just have someone sitting there that is only going to be able to play in certain competitions. I mean, Spurs had to do it with Sergio Reguilon last season because he wasn't going to sign a new deal. They were going to offer him a new deal. He wouldn't accept the places to go they were trying to get him out of the club for. And, that's what they'll fear, I think, is getting stuck with players like that who drain a lot out in the club in wages. I mean, I think all of those things, and also for me, the price tag. This is a guy who turned 30 this month, I think earlier this month. The price tag seems to be around the 21 to 26 million pound mark, kind of somewhere in that ballpark. Does that sound like a Tottenham deal? Spending that sort of money on a player in their 30s. It doesn't sound like a Spurs kind of deal to me. And look, I'm not saying that he wouldn't be good. I think he had a very difficult season last season. He had a torn, I'll get the exact wording of it. He had a torn muscle. I've got it here. Torn muscle fiber in his right adductor, which kept him out for 2.5 months. And when he came back into the team, he got ill. He had a red card that got him suspended for the next game as well.
Shock.
Yeah, well, this is it. He picked up a lot of yellow cards, didn't he, in his time at Fulham? And he is not going to be, he barely played in minutes. He was not someone that could get through and the numbers that they had at Bayern. So kind of this expectation that he's going to come in and be the perfect signing. He may well be, but he's also someone that had a lot of issues last season in terms of availability and just being higher up the pecking order. So I don't know. I'm really undecided on him. As I like aspects of his play, but do I see it being a great move for a fee? Probably not, unless that price drops down a lot. If they can get a loan with an option, I don't think I'm against that at all. I think then it becomes a good, experienced Premier League player option deal. But certainly, I think Gibbs-White. It sounds weird to say Gibbs-White's a priority when nothing's happening. But you know what I mean. There was a player that we clearly were going to go for, regardless of what was happening in the squad. Whereas for me, it feels a bit like Palhinha. Maybe it's the position's a priority, but I don't know if he, as a player, as a target, is as much of a priority.
Yeah.
Unless it's going out the door. Do you think Basuma won?
Yeah, I think Basuma will probably be the one that would go out the door if they could get money for him. Obviously, I think he showed towards the end of last season that he still has a point to prove, and he's still got a bit about him. So there would likely be interest in him, I think, if he were to be up for sale. I think the one thing I would say is, knowing how Johan Lang works, I can be 90% sure there's probably someone else he's working on in the background that no one knows about yet. But he's probably tearing his hair out that everything's gone wrong with Morgan Gibbs-White, because that came completely out of the blue. Looked like it was going to get done really quickly, and now is dragging on forever and ever. So yeah, his plan to try and keep things as close to his chest and as quiet as possible before announcing a transfer. I'm sure there's probably someone else alongside Palhinha that no one's even talking about in that kind of number 6 role that Spurs are looking at in the minute as well.
Oh, I'm sure. But I think Basuma feels like he's the one. I mean, 12 months left in his contract. Frank clearly has kind of got an eye on Bentancur. We heard him in his very first interview talking about trying to find a place for him in his team. And Basuma, look, it hasn't really worked on a consistent basis. There's been issues with discipline on the pitch, with some discipline off the pitch as well. And we've seen glimpses of what an incredible player he can be, but we've never seen a kind of an absolute league dominating Basuma like we know there's the potential within him to be. Would you loan out Archie Gray?
Oh, there's a question out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that on the pod today. No, I don't think I would. I think I'd keep him in amongst it, and I don't see why. The number of games he played last season, he's got the Premier League experience under his belt now already, and I think everyone expects him to be a star of the future. So why loan him out after he's had that experience already in the Premier League? Thomas Frank loves him and wanted to sign him at Brentford, didn't he? So I think he's got a big role to play again. Hopefully more in a midfield role that he got the opportunity to last year. He was kind of thrown in positions that he didn't want to play last year.
Yeah, I think loaning out a £40 million teenager would just be madness.
Yeah.
And I do think Thomas Frank will do big stuff with him. I've seen a bit of kind of people turning on Pat Matasar, like, oh, he should be one to go. It's kind of like, you kind of forget how the huge strides, quite literally, because he's got really long legs, the huge strides he's made, Pat Matasar, and some of the big games that he's been massive in, and don't forget he put the ball in Bilbao. Pat Matasar.
The only argument I would make for that is, and I don't think Pat Matasar should go. The only argument I would make from a business point of view is probably more sellable than Yves Bissouma is, given his age.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I just think he's got bundles of potential to be a superstar especially under Thomas Frank. We know his ability with young players, and his whole kind of coaching career began with kind of working with young players in the Danish FA. So yeah, I think he's another player that we can really watch out for this season. I would not be letting him head out the door. Bissouma, sadly, I would. I do think that he's kind of, I can't see. Look, I'd love to be absolutely wrong when we're talking in a year's time about, God, do you remember when we were saying that Bissouma was, done at Spurs and in a barnstorming season? But I just feel like there's been so many times when we've said that, and it's just never come to pass. Yeah. And look, I'm not talking on Dembele levels of like not getting to where we want him to. This certainly he's done enough, and last season, especially towards the end, he kind of came into the frame and helped out in Europe in quite a big way. But yeah, there's nowhere near has he touched the potential that he could have been at Tottenham. But there's a few. He's not alone in that. But yeah, I do think it's funny talking about a squad that needs strengthening but also needs trimming. And I know I think people kind of struggle with that. Well, if they had injury crisis last season, don't they need a big squad? And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't quite work like that. Essentially, you fix the medical side of things as well. There's 2 departures in the medical side of things in sports science, so they're obviously looking for new people in the top jobs there. So hopefully they'll kind of get a handle on that for next season. But they need to. He needs to start making some decisions on some of those players. There's a few like little things like Will Lancashire. We didn't even mention that. Kind of mentioned him in passing. Again, another summer, Will Lancashire's scored a pre-season goal and really kind of done himself wonders. But what does that leave Dane Scarlett? What happens with Dane Scarlett, who every manager has told us for years is the next big thing coming out of Tottenham. I remember Mourinho saying he was going to be an England international. He even tipped him as a potential World Cup candidate. And it's a huge year for Dane Scarlett, really, I think, in his Tottenham career. Like, does he ever kind of fulfill that initial promise? Or I think maybe he's got potentially 2 years left. I don't know if there's an option in there as well, but or will he be having to head off? And there's loads of these little decisions that I think Thomas Frank needs to make. Probably, you'd imagine we'll get that special little tour website story on the Spurs thing. These players have been left behind to sort themselves out, transfer, kind of things like that. And I'm fascinated to see who we have on that list. Go on, guess. I'm going to put it to you. Who's going to be on that list?
Who's going to be on that list that's looking for a transfer out of the club?
There's one obvious one because he's not currently at the club. He's rehabbing in Spain.
Brian Hill, obviously.
Yes,
he will be. Sure. Yeah, he's got to be looking for other opportunities. I'm struggling to. It's been a year. I'm struggling to remember who's still behind the scenes. I don't think Bissouma will be left behind to look for other options. I think he'll be part of the squad.
I don't think so. Yeah.
No. And then you're looking at players like we've talked about Vuskovic and Takai. One of them will probably go out on loan. One of them will probably stay. I don't think it's leaving them behind because they're looking for other transfers. Reguilon's already gone. I'm trying to remember. Højbjerg's already gone.
Yep. Alejo Valise has gone out on loan.
Valise, yeah, he's already gone, hasn't he? To is it Rosario? Yep. Who else is there?
The squad is so big, you're forgetting people.
Yeah.
I mean, who else we got? You've potentially got. I don't think Ben Davies will be left behind, but certainly, I think he will be given the option if he does want to kind of look for a move. You would think, although his versatility, could be a big thing. He is in the final 12 months of his contract. Who else? I just thought of someone had gone right out of my head. Oh, maybe Manor Solomon. Manor Solomon has an injury at the moment, picked up in training. So it depends whether he might, I think we're looking at a few weeks here. So maybe he misses the tour anyway, which kind of combines with potentially heading off. It's a funny one with him. I get the impression that he would love to stay at Spurs, but I also get the impression that Spurs, having bought him for nothing, it's a pure profit scenario if they sell him, and it's in a position where they've got a lot of wingers, and I can't really see him breaking through. And especially having this injury has probably stuffed his chances of trying to impress Thomas Frank as well.
Yeah. Ashley Phillips could be one.
Ashley Phillips, potentially. That's the kind of the other thing when you look at that little list of the three that didn't even get on the weekend. So you had Yang Min Hyuk. I think you'd imagine he'll go on the tour, kind of being back to his homeland and everything as well. George Abbott, as always, he was likely to head out on loan anyway. But I think he's impressed them. I think he's done everything he could possibly do behind the scenes. And Ashley Phillips, I just feel like it's not going to work for Ashley Phillips at Spurs. I do feel sorry for him because he's clearly a very good defender. And he's been really excellent on both of his loans. Was it Plymouth and Stoke? And I just feel like the opportunities aren't dropping for him. Every time it looks like he might get a chance, they sign another couple of centre-backs. He could potentially be one. I think that's probably going to be it in terms of, unless he makes a big decision over someone, I think that's probably going to be the most of that list. I think Valise would have been on that list had they not sorted out the loan.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned the tour there. Just before we kind of wrap up, we have got one more match before you head out and the team head out on tour. Luton this weekend. I assume we're going to be treated to a similar situation with Reading, two entirely different teams in each half, with Thomas Frank getting the opportunity to look at as many players as he can.
You think so? The early ones are normally the 45-minuters, and then you have another couple on the bench like those three at the weekend that potentially can come on. I hope it sounded like we might get to see Richarlison this time, so that might limit Will Lankshire's kind of involvement. Essentially. It just seems it's harsh, isn't it? You score a goal, and next game he might get any minutes, but I think he also needs to get minutes in Richarlison's legs too. I think I get the impression he likes Richarlison, by the way.
I was going to say, it was interesting to hear him talk about him, kind of bring him up, name check him in that press conference, that he's not looking to bring anyone in the kind of forward area, because you mentioned Richarlison, and yes, he may have had injuries, but then mentioned that he did kind of contribute towards the second half of, towards the end of last season, should we say, rather than the second half of last season.
Yeah, he's definitely, that was the one position where he kind of did rule out any further additions, was in those attacking areas. I still think that if Spurs got a really good bid for Richarlison, they'd think availability against the money and maybe signing someone that might have a bit more of a kind of a run of games in them. But I always say it, and I will continue to say it, whenever he plays, he kind of makes an impact. So I can see why he would like him. Is there a little part of you that's still concerned that he needed to give him another week of work before he could play the first friendly? A little bit, I won't lie. There's a little bit of me that's kind of thinking, well, if he's been fit and he's been fit all summer and he's been working in pre-season, kind of why was he not ready for the first game? Unless there was something else. And again, it's wildly speculating and guessing, but it just, it's a bit of a strange one. But we'll see against Luton.
I think you run into then, if you do kind of let Richarlison go, you run into that age-old issue of how do you replace him? How do you get someone who, let's be honest, clearly loves the club, given his time here, and not willing to sit on the bench, but has sat on the bench and takes on that number 2 role really well, and shows he can do the job when called upon. we always had run into that issue when Harry Kane was here of trying to find a kind of backup to Harry Kane. And we might not be able to call on Richarlison all that much, but if you go and sell him for £50 million or whatever, who do you bring in? Who do you bring in to go and kind of play that role?
Vincent Janssen.
bring Vinny back.
Oh, I had such high hopes for Vinny Janssen. He's back in Belgium. He's in Belgium now, doesn't he? Doesn't he play for Toby Alderweireld's club?
Oh, does he?
Yeah, I think so. I think he was there because he went off to Mexico, didn't he?
Yes, Monterrey.
Yes. Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. Although I would say, in my mind, without being too brutal, I do think Richarlison's probably more replaceable than a Solanke. I think Solanke, kind of what he brings is a little bit more diverse, perhaps, in the different kind of qualities he's got. Whereas Richarlison, I don't think it would be the end of the world to try to replace him. But I do agree he's got a lot of plus points and merits to him that I also think, from his point of view, don't forget it's a World Cup year kind of coming up. Well, so he does need to get minutes. I think there's going to be a lot of games to be had this season, but as always, the key for him is whether he's going to be able to play in them and make himself available to be able to play in them. So yeah, I think Richarlison, going back to Luton, Richarlison hopefully we'll get to see. Takai, we'll find out whether that knock that he got was enough to keep him out for a second game or not. But again, he shouldn't be losing too much fitness, having already played quite a few games. I think someone worked out something like almost 30 games since February. I can't remember what the number was now. It was a lot of games. So probably this rest actually might end up being like a bit of a mini kind of break for his legs. I shouldn't say break and leg, but at a club like Spurs with so many injuries.
No.
Yeah, and the weird thing we'll also get to see is we'll get to see a recently departed Tottenham player up against Tottenham, won't we?
Yes, sorry, yes.
I
only wrote a story about him on Saturday. Yes, Josh Keeley will be, we hope to see him between the sticks against Spurs on Saturday. Contract talks kind of didn't get anywhere with Spurs, did they, to renew his contract? And I think you've written about it a number of times with Guillermo Vicario at the club and Anthony. And then the fact that Brandon Austin is the only club-trained player left standing at the club was always going to be part of the Champions League squad as well. So Keeley was always going to struggle to get chances, wasn't he?
Yeah, unfortunately, because he's very talented. Spurs have put a sell-on clause. There's no buyback clause, but they have put a sell-on clause in there. And you can see why. Because I think, and I get the impression this is the way they feel in the Spurs as well. I think he's going to be a Premier League keeper, but he's just at Tottenham at the wrong time. He's at Spurs at a time when they needed if he'd been homegrown, I think Brandon Austin probably would have been the one to leave. But unfortunately, nope. As in, unfortunately for Josh. Well, I say unfortunately for Josh Keeley, but maybe his career now starts. It really gets going. Luton, I think people would have expected him maybe to go to the Championship, but Luton, you'd imagine, will be one that will be looking to bounce back. And it sounds like they made him a good offer of kind of regular football, and that's what he wants. That's the most important thing for him because he's right on the cusp of joining another kind of level of goalkeepers. 16 clean sheets at Orient last season, got called up into Republic of Ireland squad. He's a very talented young keeper. And it will be weird to see him kind of lining up for the opposition, which you presume he would, especially as a goalkeeper a week or so on. You would think he'll be part of their squad. And sad to see him go. Alfie Dorrington as well. He headed off to Aberdeen on loan for the season. A good move for him, I think that. I don't think he was getting close to getting into the Tottenham kind of breaking into that little pack of centre-backs. And I think going back to a place where he's just won the Cup with the Scottish Cup, he's got European football at Aberdeen as well. It's a great chance for him to kind of have a season of continuing development, but also if a decision has to be made on his future next summer, then he'll have done himself the world of good, even if it is staying at Aberdeen for the long term or if it's going elsewhere. So a couple of good moves, I think, for the players involved. It's just a bit of a shame, obviously, that they haven't broken into the Spurs as we would have wished.
I think it's always a shame, isn't it, when kind of young players kind of move on and don't. It's horrible to say don't make the grade because I think, as you say, Josh Keeley probably will make the grade, and you never know with Jamie Dorrington if he will as well. Playing in the Scottish Premiership with Aberdeen will only do good things for his career. Always a shame when they leave, but It's high turnover at football clubs, aren't there? So it's always going to happen.
It's a brutal world. Yeah. Alfie Dorrington was the big defender coming through. He was the one that everyone had high hopes for.
What we're talking about him, and when Spurs had defensive issues, how many times we had defensive issues? Like, oh, will Dorrington get a chance? Will Ashley Phillips get a chance? And what's going to happen here, there, and never actually happened.
No, a couple of hamstring injuries, I think, did for him as well. I think at a crucial time when maybe he would have got some opportunities. Look, he did make his Premier League debut. Played against Southampton for half an hour or so. So he's kind of already reached a certain level. But yeah, I'd love to see a player coming through the ranks properly this season. We talk about McAtee at City. It just kind of feels like Spurs have got away from that a bit. I know Oliver Skipp, people have their opinions on whether he was good enough or not, but at least he was a product from the academy that was getting regular football. I think Mikey Moore is still pretty young. It may end up that he maybe goes on loan. I do think the homegrown aspect might stuff him a little bit on that if he does have lines on doing that. But I mean, I'd love to see someone come through this season, whether it's a Jamie Donnelly or even an Alfie Devine. You've got some in the pipeline like Luca Williams-Barnett, who's very, very, very young. He's 16, but obviously he was on the bench 3 times last season, despite the fact that he was only 16. So there's all these players that are coming through. I just desperate because we cover academy football as well.
Yeah.
We kind of see these players going through, and we saw how proud everyone was when Mikey Moore, Damola Ajayi, obviously, he's gone off to Doncaster, isn't it?
Doncaster, yeah.
And Dane Scarlett all score that night against Elfsborg. It was incredible, but it just feels like that academy, it just hasn't quite produced a sustained person for the first team for a while, and I really want that to happen.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously Stuart Lewis has a highly regarded, big reputation, and has worked with it was the under-18s, wasn't it, last season. Now has moved up into the first team. So he knows those players very well and might be able to give them their chance. But at the same time, you're now looking for someone else to kind of take on that mantle with the young players and kind of build them up as much as they can. And you hope you don't lose what Stuart Lewis has built already.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really interesting role, that. I don't know. There's a part of me that kind of thinks, is there enough for him to do? Because he's mainly working with the young players that come up. And certainly in pre-season, there's quite a few of them now. You've got Donnelly, Devine, Moore, George Abbott as well. But when the season actually is up and running, and that squad, which we've already said is huge, I do wonder how many young players are going to be involved in that kind of thing. But maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's what Thomas Frank has said. Look, I will have a certain amount of those players that are going to be in and around first team training every single day, and I want you to be working with them. So hopefully everything I've just kind of whinged about will be kind of coming to pass because of the structure they're putting in place. That would be great.
Well, all these issues with the squad in the Premier League and the even bigger squad issues in the Champions League, if we can call upon some under-21s players to actually be part of the first team setup, then so much the better, isn't it?
Well, they're the club trained players of the future. Yeah. They're never going to sort this issue if they don't bring some people through.
Exactly. Right, we will leave this episode there, I think. Remember to keep checking in with football.london for all your latest Tottenham Hotspur news, particularly this week and heading into next week as Ali heads off on the pre-season tour. You can either download Saily in your app store and use our code GOLDGUEST at the checkout to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase, or online you can go straight to saily.com/goldguest. For more information, please go to our episode description box.